Have you seen any evidence of him calling in yet? So that gives us 5, and you're chairman tonight, and I'll help you out as much as I can. So if you want to start the meeting and go through the song and dance.
Was that him that spoke before?
I think that number is Reed.
Yes, Reed Auerbach.
Yeah, I don't think that was him.
He
Well,
was
we were
in.
talking to him. I don't know how he got in there. Yeah, if we're running into that issue, it really becomes a court matter, and we should grant whatever forgiveness is necessary because the inability of,
might be
because
Marilyn.
of the inability of us.
Right, hang on.
Lee's on video.
You're muted.
I see
Lee.
Leases there with the name Greg Brasher. I think I know what's wrong.
Am I on?
We all see it.
Lee.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
All right, we have 5 now.
We were just getting ready to do something else.
Okay. Well, I'm here. Got all my paperwork here.
Okay. You want to read us into the meeting? I think we're pretty much set here.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. Okay. I'm almost settled. It's a real Rube Goldberg thing here. So I guess I will open this evening's meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Good evening and welcome to the January 24th meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. For all present, let's spend a few minutes reviewing how this meeting will be conducted. For the first 2 hours prior to 9:30 p.m., we shall hold a public hearing on the applications that you received a notice on and that were listed in the Norwalk Hour for hearing. After the application is announced by the chair and read by the secretary, the applicant will come forward, state his or her name for the record, and then present the appeal or relief being sought. Please present those zoning issues that are relevant to the practical difficulties or hardship requiring this application. After you or your representative have spoken, those in favor will have the chance to be heard. After that segment, those against the application will have the opportunity to state their opposition for the record. In the case of an appeal, the zoning staff will have the opportunity to present their findings. Finally, after those against the application have spoken, the applicant and only the applicant will have the opportunity to rebut and respond to the issues raised. The hearing is then closed and the next application is called. New applications will not normally be heard after 9:30 p.m. as the board must discuss and act upon these applications. Please note that no further public input is accepted at that time. You are welcome to stay for that portion of tonight's meeting, but should you decide to leave, you may contact the zoning office tomorrow to learn about our decision. Before we proceed tonight, I must remind you that this hearing is recorded and will become a matter of permanent public record. So, Mr. Secretary, would you read the first item on our agenda this evening?
Yes. 20-121701, 83 East Avenue LLC. Variance of required parking previously approved by variance. Reduced parking from 116 spaces to 103 spaces in East Avenue Village District and be residence property located 83 East Avenue, District 1, Block 62, Lot 2. And the request of the applicant is a variance amending a previously granted variance, parking layout and configuration, which was approved in 1983. Current variance request is for reduction of required number of parking spaces, layout, and configuration changes. The background. The property was acquired by the current owner in 2018. A contractor recently resurfaced and restriped the parking lot. But many of the spaces were not in compliance with the minimum dimensions. As a result, a notice of violation was issued by staff. Applicant now seeks variance since the 1983 parking layout was not attainable based upon the physical boundaries of the parking lot. Staff analysis and findings, the current proposed parking layout and configuration, the number of spaces appears to be safest and most reasonable solution. The hardship being that based on lot dimensions and the original 1983 variance layout could not have been installed. You want to call your folks, Lee?
Yes, will the applicant or owner's representative come forward and identify themselves?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Robert France, and I'm an attorney here in Norwalk, and I represent the applicant 83 East Avenue LLC. For the record, notice of the hearing was sent certified mail, return receipt requested to all the abutting and nearby property owners that were listed in our application. All the green cards that we had received back have been delivered to Tammy Maldonado. There was one which we did not get back yet, but we had provided a copy of the notice that we sent out along with proof of mailing. As was stated, we're seeking a variance to change the layout of the parking lot from a layout that was previously approved by the board in 1983. That was variance number 830407-03. And principally, it's going to reduce the number of parking spots from 116 down to 103, along with some other layout and other configurations. As was stated, the property 83 East Avenue is in District 1, Block 62, Lot 2. The zoning of the front portion of the lot is East Village District and B residence zoning in the back. If I may share my screen. Let me. Can you see that?
No.
No. Tammy, have you given him approval to share? You're on
Yeah.
mute.
All
Okay.
should be good.
There we go.
Now you can see it?
We can see your desktop, yeah.
Yeah, we see your desktop.
So you should be seeing an aerial view of the property, just to help orient you.
Yeah, I just say swap screens. We see your desktop.
You might have to click on that to make it show up in large size. Right now, we're seeing all the files.
Here, let me try this over. I'm sorry, now do you see it?
We do.
Yep.
Okay, so to help orient you, this is 83 East Avenue. This is the building that exists on there. It's a 3-story structure built in the mid-60s. It's got gross floor area of about 39,000 square feet, and the total lot is 1.37 acres. As you can tell, the parking lot is flag-shaped, extending on the north side of the building and then into the back of the building. This back area is the B residence zone. As the secretary stated, this building was purchased in November of 2018, and when we redid the parking lot and there was a mix-up with the contractor, it resulted in a violation being issued. In order to address the violation, we engaged Doug Folds of Ryan and Folds to prepare a new survey in connection with the zoning violation. After considering several layouts, the applicant determined that the most expeditious resolution of the violation and also the layout that would provide the most spots would be to just go ahead and try to comply with the 1983 layout. So the applicant asked Mr. Folds to go ahead and do a new survey laying the 83 layout onto the survey. When Mr. Folds tried to do that, he came back to the applicant and said it's impossible to do within the physical boundaries of the lot. Obviously we asked how that could happen. And Mr. Folds has expressed an opinion how that likely happened. He submitted a letter with our application, and I'm just going to quote for the record from it. In my professional opinion, there are a couple reasons for the difference discovered. Our current survey has been prepared using computer-aided drafting methods which plot field and survey data with better accuracy than the methods used in 1983. The standard practice in that era would have been hand plotting with a scale protractor and straight edge. Thus, the original drawing and the subsequent parking plan may have some inherent scaling issues. Secondly, the 1983 layout appears to have been plotted on a duplicate of the original. The process for creating this duplicate would lead to stretching of the product and therefore introduce further scaling issues. Reproduction techniques would use large rollers that stretch the printed material. When we learned this, we did go back and we checked city's aerial photos that they had to just see if we could ever find whether or not this building and this parking lot had complied. There are 4 photos in the records that span the period from 1995 to 2013. And it doesn't appear that during any period of this time that that lot has complied with the 1983 layout. As a minimum, those photos, you can see that there's angled parking where there should be straight parking and multiple rows where there would not be. There are a couple other things which lead to the hardships and the practical difficulty with trying to comply with the 1983. I'm going to try and share my screen again and illustrate for you what those are. Sorry, just bear with me a second. Are you seeing this layout, this survey?
We're seeing your your just
Desktop again.
screen.
I'm seeing your desktop. Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, if you notice how the lot line runs, you know, it runs in a downward slide and then it sort of levels off and runs off flat. Now, if I can bring up a copy of the, it's a copy of the 1983 layout. Can you see that one yet?
No.
I haven't seen any change from what I was looking at.
Now, do you see
Yes.
okay. If you see right in this area where that lot line comes, it would typically be coming down, following along here, and then running along here. So in 1983, this plot that was approved allows parking right here to extend over onto what is 79 East Avenue, and then the parking back here to extend from 79 over onto to 83 East Avenue's parking. Now, the way this came about is that in 1983, this lot and all of this area, along with 6 Bettswood, which is this back area, and all of 83 was all owned by the same entity. And so when they filed the application for the variance, they did not respect the lot lines and how all this was set up. So of course, you know, fast forward, and sometime between 1983 and 1997, 79 East Avenue subdivided and sold this parcel off, and it's now 4 Bettswood Avenue with a single family residence on it. Let me see if I can go back. So what, again, because of the difficulties now with not being able to comply with the 1983 and stay with our own boundaries, we are seeking to have a new parking lot layout approved. I'm going back to the other one. Did you, you're not seeing the layout that I had shown you before, right?
No. Still seeing the blue one.
Okay. And now you're seeing the new one?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So what we proposed in working with city planning is we're doing a different layout, but it's predominantly taking as best as we could the 1983 layout that was approved and fitting as much of it as possible as we can into the existing space. So as you come in, we've provided for compact spaces that come along here in order to be able to get a reasonable aisle width as you come through here. And then we were only able to fit in 1 row of parking here, whereas in 1983, they somehow provided for 2. We do have the handicap basically provided. There's 5 spaces there. So this would bring everything down to 103 spaces. There is an easement since 2006 that runs over 79. So the general flow of traffic is predominantly comes in through 83, circles around, comes around, and then heads out over 79 onto Bettswood. And that's where it becomes important, is why we've put the compact spaces in here to provide the turn radius here. We think that this is the best that can be done that fits in here. I think, as has been explained, it's impossible to comply with the 1983. And this sort of balances all of those interests for having safety in the parking lot, maximum number of spaces, and having appropriately sized width of spaces between the compact and that. The one thing that I would like to make clear in seeking this approval is that the variance we're requesting is simply limited to a change of the parking lot layout as it pertains only to 83 East. Except for that modification, The 1983 variance should remain unchanged and still applicable as to 83, 79, 4, and 6 Bettswood, because it includes continuing the use of the back portion of the lot of 83, the residence portion, to be used for parking. It was been used as parking since the 60s. Originally, it was under an old local law 15 that's been since repealed, but then it was embedded in the 1983 variance. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
I actually have several. Based on the meets and bounds of the original survey and the current survey, is there a difference in lot area?
No, there is not a difference in lot area. It's 1.37 acres.
Okay. That negates my second question. Anyone else wish to ask the applicant questions?
I was
if this-
chairman, this is Andy, I was chairman of Public Works when there was a blow up between the owner who had, or whoever had control of 79 and this property, and it had to do with the right of way to go through, and they had blocked it off and refused to allow anybody to transit over it. Do you have any difficulties with the current owner?
No, actually, we have a pretty good working relationship with them. And, you know, not for nothing, the easement is recorded as of record.
All right, thanks.
I actually do have another question. Based on the loss of parking spaces, how many square feet in the building would you have lost had this building been constructed today?
I don't know the exact answer to your question, but being constructed today, my recollection is that without a special permit, I think the maximum is a 6,000 square foot building or something like that. It's very small. In fact, if more than half of this building gets destroyed through whatever, we would not be able to build back without a special permit,
Okay.
is my understanding.
So if this is not approved, what would the building owner have to do?
I do not know the answer to the question. I mean, there's always been parking allowed. In fact, the certificate of occupancy that I was able to find from 1964, there's a notation on that there were 93 parking spots at the time it was built, that it was approved for. So we still have more parking available than what was approved when the building was built.
Okay.
Will the
Yeah,
building
maybe-
owner have to modify leases to the tenants based on the reduction of parking spaces?
Since we've owned the building, the approach we've taken is that we have not included in the lease any specification as to the number of spots. It's all on a first come, first served basis. And we are trying to, as leases renewed and as they go away, eliminating any of the parking commitments that we had inherited. I believe that at the time I looked at that back in early 2019, the building would be overcommitted from the 103.
Okay. Further questions?
Yeah, maybe this is a question for Tammy. Does she have an answer? Like if we deny this, what is the next step for the building?
So unfortunately, they're under violation with us, so this is sort of their only solution. And that's why the report sort of concurs that this is the safest layout, even though it reduces the overall number, because apparently the configuration previously granted was unachievable.
I can't hear you.
Oh.
Sorry, you were just too far away from your mic.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So I was saying that when we reviewed this, staff members sat with the attorney and reviewed And this was, the current layout is the most practical and safest. And based on we reviewed the tenant lists, and this is really the only solution for him, because he's currently under violation with us because of the parking configuration as is. So they're going to need to remedy it, and this is the safest remedy. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
It does, thank you.
Does, thank you. Any further questions for the applicant?
Not here.
not for me.
Well, I guess at this point, we'll ask if there are any members of the public that wish to comment positively on this application. I
And to do
hear,
that, you just have to raise your hand and I will promote you to be able to speak.
are there any members of the public that wish to speak against this application? Raise your hands. Hearing none, I'll turn it back to the applicant and ask if he has any further comments or statements.
Seeing no questions, I have none. We request that it be approved. As it's been explained, there aren't many options.
Okay,
Thank you for your consideration.
I will then close this item on the public hearing, and we will discuss it later this evening. We will move on.
Yeah. No, I just, myself.
I got it. I got it.
Okay,
20/12/17/02.
Put the lights on, it's to, shows all the room around.
Okay, be
All
careful
right.
about having your mic on and talking to other people in the room. 20/12/17/02, 26 Stewart Ave LLC. Special exemption to continue non-conforming commercial use of structure and property in D residence zone. Property located at 26 Stewart Avenue, District 1, Block 2, Lot 2. Applicant is seeking a special exception for the legal non-conforming status of the property and structure, although it has not been occupied for more than 1 year. Background: in 1993, zoning permit was issued for interior partition on first floor of second story commercial building for additional office Briggs Tire office warehouse use. Although no additional permit records were found, the applicant lists various commercial tenants through 2018. Staff analysis and findings: it does not appear that the property owner intended to abandon the commercial use, rather that they have had difficulty in finding new commercial tenants. The case of hardship does not need to be demonstrated, since this is a special exemption request as opposed to a variance request. That's it, but I have one quick question for our staff before we get into this. Was this already designated commercial? I mean,
Well, it would have been just because of that permit that was previously issued.
okay, all right. So they're not looking for a change of status.
No.
okay, I will request that the applicant or representatives step forward and identify themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Liz Succi. I'm a partner at the law firm of Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, 707 Summer Street in Stamford, and I represent the property owner, 26 Stewart Avenue, LLC. Also on the call this evening is Kevin Magner. He's a principal with 27 Stewart, LLC. The Magner family has owned Briggs Tire, which is diagonally across the street from this property, for upwards of 50 years. In addition, on the call is Reed Auerbach. And Reed is not only a 40-year member of the Norwalk Fire Department and a Norwalk native, but also a commercial real estate broker. And his testimony may be helpful to you tonight if in fact you need further information than what I present or what's been in the moving papers. As was indicated, this is an application not for variance, but for special exception to continue a non-conforming use that has not been in existence for more than a year. Notification of the hearing was sent to neighbors on December 4th by certified mail, return receipt requested, and regular mail. And those domestic return receipt cards were returned back to Planning and Zoning last month prior to the hearing that was originally scheduled for December 17th. My client contacted neighbors directly in addition to the notice that is required to be sent. Several submitted letters in support, and I asked that those be read into the record at the appropriate time. One neighbor, the owners of 28 Stewart Avenue, which is directly adjacent to this property to the north, raised concerns and made various requests of my client, such as the continuation of the use as a warehouse and storage building use, an installation of a privacy fence to provide some visual screening, which fence has in fact been installed, and several other requests. We've been working with the neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Treglia and their counsel, and have come to an agreement which has been prepared and signed by the parties. And should this special exception be granted, that agreement will be recorded on the land records, so all subsequent owners, heirs, beneficiaries, and the like will be subject to its terms and conditions. As mentioned in the memorandum, the applicant is 26 Stewart Avenue LLC, owned by Kevin Magner, who is the owner of Briggs Tire. It is District 1, Block 2, Lot 2, and the zone currently today is D as in dog residence. It had previously been Industrial Number 1, but the zoning was changed in 1988 by the city's action on its own motion. They rezoned this parcel and others, making not only the building, but the use that was contained therein legally non-conforming. At one time, there was a tenant called New Tech. Then it was Aquarius Pools for 5 or 7 years. And most recently, GP Warehouse, an auto parts warehouse facility, was installed on the upper floor and then took the entire building through approximately 2008 when it vacated. The building is about 6,000 square feet. It's 2-story, constructed in 1972 when the zone was Industrial Number 1, and which allowed that type of construction and that use and structure at the time. As indicated in our moving papers, once a property or structure becomes legally non-conforming, there are certain constitutionally protected rights that inure to the benefit of that property owner. And that information in the case law is set forth in our moving papers. A change in the character of the use does not constitute an unlawful expansion, but generally non-conforming uses in buildings can't be expanded, but those uses may be intensified. Your own zoning regulations acknowledge non-conformities and allow them to continue, but to strictly limit the extent to which they may be established, continued, expanded, or altered, and that's in section 118, 800A. Furthermore, a non-conforming use may change from one non-conforming use to another, provided an application is submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that you make the determination that the proposed use is equally or more appropriate to the neighborhood, and that it will have the same or lesser impact on the surrounding neighborhood than the current non-conforming use. In response to Mr. Conroy's question, we are not seeking to change this non-conforming use to another. It is to reinstate, establish, and continue the legal non-conforming warehouse and storage use. Furthermore, the zoning regulations in section 118.14.10A2F allow a non-conforming use or land or structure which is discontinued or abandoned for a continuous period of 1 year it must be used in conformance with the regulations, except where the intent of the owner can be established that he or she never intended to abandon that non-conforming use. And I believe with the information we will provide and have provided, that will be clearly demonstrated. So this is why the applicant is before you this evening. We are focusing on that continuation of the warehouse and storage use, which has been in effect for more than 35 years. So how do you establish that? How does the owner indicate his intention not to abandon a use once a structure has been vacated? Well, he can install a new tenant of the same use and type, and that clearly exhibits intent not to abandon. He can post a sign or tell his friends and neighbors that the property is available, or list the property with a broker. And that's exactly what Mr. Magner has done. He enlisted the services of Mr. Auerbach, a broker with Colonial Realty, to then market the property as a warehouse and storage use. Unfortunately, due to either economics and then COVID, we've been unable to find a warehouse or storage tenant at this time, but we would like to continue those efforts because the building is well suited and appropriately designed for that use. It's a 2-story square warehouse building, and that's the most appropriate use for it. So that's the long and short of it. My client never intended to abandon that use. And this application arises out of several discussions that he had with Michael Rinn in 2019 before Mr. Rinn left the employ of the city. And this is the only opportunity for him to reestablish and continue that non-conforming use. If you have any further questions of me or Mr. Magner or Mr. Auerbach, they're all on the call tonight, and I'm sure they'd be happy to answer your questions and provide any additional information that you may need. So if we do have some letters of support, I would ask that those be read into the record. I believe that Counsel for Our Neighbors is on the meeting tonight, and I'm sure she would have some comments for you as well. But I think my client has done a very good job to address the concerns of the neighbors and would like the opportunity to continue to use this building as it was originally constructed and as it had been used over the years.
Mr. Secretary, I'll ask that you read those letters into the record.
Okie dokie. The first of them, the 64 Connecticut Avenue Associates LLC, addressed to you and the Zoning Board of Appeals, 26 Stewart Avenue, applications for special exemption to continue non-conforming use. Mr. Levy, my name is Fred O'Neill, and I own property at 64 Connecticut Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut, which abuts the rear of the property owned by 26 Stewart Ave, LLC, Kevin Magner, at 26 Stewart Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut. Mr. Magner has advised me of his desire to continue the non-conforming warehouse storage use at 26 Stewart Avenue, Norwalk. I understand that to achieve that it is necessary for Mr. Magner to obtain a special exemption from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I have no objection and support his request. Please approve the application. Very truly yours, Fred O'Neill. Lee Levy, Chairman, Zoning Board of Appeals, City of Norwalk. Attention, Tammy Maldonado, 26 Stewart Avenue, LLC, 26 Stewart Avenue, Norwalk. Application for special exemption to continue non-conforming use. Dear Mr. Levy, my name is Al Capusa, and I own property at 76 Connecticut Avenue, which is near the property owned by 26 Stewart Avenue, LLC, Kevin Magner, at 26 Stewart Avenue in Norwalk, Connecticut. I have discussed with Mr. Magner his desire to continue the non-conforming warehouse storage. Let me double check that I'm on. I am on. I understand to achieve this, it is necessary for Mr. Magner to obtain a special exemption from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I have no objection to his plans and support his request. Please approve his application. Very truly yours, Al Cavuth. And the third and last that I have, Cherry's Upholstery, Auto Home Marine, Lee Levy, Chairman, Zoning Board of Appeals, City of Norwalk. Attention, Tammy Maldonado. 26 Stewart Avenue, LLC, 26 Stewart Avenue. Application for special exemption to continue non-conforming use. My name is Gerald A. Milbauer, and I own the property at 67-89 Connecticut Avenue, which is across the street from the property owned in Norwalk. Mr. Magner has advised me of his desire to continue the non-conforming warehouse storage use at 26 Stewart Avenue, even though it has not been put to that use for a while. I understand that to achieve this, it is necessary for Mr. Magner to obtain a special exemption from the Zoning Board of Appeals. I have no objection to his plans and support his request. Please approve his application. Very truly yours, Gerald A. Milbauer. Those are the three that I have.
And those are the three that I've seen. Do any board members have questions for Ms. Sachi or the consultants on this?
I have just one real quick one. I understand who has control of the property and understand what you're doing, and I know why you're asking. But was the original request for the property use to have office and warehouse?
That is correct. There was a permit issued that included accessory office on the second floor, and that is also to continue, just as accessory in accordance with that permit.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't want to see you try to change use here. That would be unnecessary.
Do you have any
Anyone else?
questions for Mr. Magner or for Mr. Auerbach?
The only thing I'd ask is, I'm sure that considerable efforts have been made to find a tenant within the confines of the zoning regulations, use regulations. And, Connecticut Avenue is a somewhat desirable commercial location. And is there any idea how long it might take for this tenant to come on the horizon?
I think one issue that has been facing my client is the questionable nature of the continuation of this non-conforming use, since it is just that. There's nothing that he could point to that any board or agency said, yes, this is absolutely a use that is allowed on this property. There have been questions. So perhaps with your action, if you deem it appropriate to act this evening and grant the request, that may move interest to a more concrete level, that then potential tenants won't wonder if in fact this is really a non-conforming use that has been recognized by the city and a use that could go into that site that the city would recognize. Perhaps Mr. Auerbach may be able to give a better idea of what the timing might be, given his experience in the area. Reed, could you opine on that?
Mr. Auerbach's mic is off. You'd have to turn it on.
Fortunately, he was on for a while and he was chatting, and now it seems like.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mr. Auerbach.
Okay, thank you so much. So good evening, everybody. You can call me Reed, first of all. I'm a Norwalk native. I grew up in East Norwalk. I went through original Marvin School, Nathan Hale, and City Hall. Next week, I start 43 years in the Norwalk Fire Department. I've been a commercial broker in Norwalk for the last 15 years. And it's very exciting to see everything going on. Getting to back what Ms. Suchi said, though, we're not asking for a change in anything. We're just asking to continuation. I've been marketing the property now pretty much since it was last vacated. With the economy and COVID, things have slowed up a little bit. I'm starting to see a lot more activity now. I'm actually getting a lot of out-of-state brokers are coming in. But again, as Ms. Suchi said, a lot of people have asked the question about the continuation of the usage. So I think that has steered people away a little bit. That said, I've had quite a few inquiries and working very diligently. This is a property that we work on every day, phone calls and sending flyers out, knocking on doors. As a Norwalk native, I hate to see vacant properties. I want to see everything filled up. So again, I think one of the big things is specifically is the question of what the continuation is of the usage. So, but again, I'm starting to see the market change.
Well, that's good to hear. Hopefully, if we render a positive decision tonight, that will certainly help your marketing.
I definitely agree. That would make a huge difference.
Okay, good to know. Any other further questions? I'll ask if there is any member of the public who wishes to speak in agreement with the applicant. I hear no one stepping.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi. Yes, I'm Linda Lasky. I'm an attorney with the law offices of Green and Gross in Bridgeport. And I represent Victoria and Salvatore Treglia, who own the property next door to the subject property at 28 Stewart Avenue.
yes.
I just would like to lend my support in light of the agreement that my clients have reached with the owner of 26 Stewart Avenue with the assistance of Attorney Suchi. And we're pleased that we were able to come to an agreement. There were some concerns that my clients had about various issues that I think have been resolved. And just like to note for the record that we have an agreement that we intend to have that made part of the land records, recorded in the land records. And it deals with things like lighting and parking and a privacy fence. And of course, limiting the use, as has been described, to a warehouse and storage space for the time being anyway. So that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for coming forward on this. Tammy, have you seen this agreement?
Not.
We can't hear you. Try again.
I have not.
Okay. Should that agreement become part of the file in your office? Even though it's on the land
Yeah,
record?
I think we could ask Attorney Suchi to give us a copy of that, the filing on the land record, and I'll include that in the file.
Good. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of this application? Hearing none, I will ask Ms. Suchi if she wishes to make a final statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We would be happy to provide to staff a copy of the agreement once it's recorded on the land records, assuming that this agency grants the special exception. And I did want to thank Attorney Lasky for her assistance. There were some concerns, as she indicated, raised by her client. And frankly, the 4-member board in December gave us the opportunity to take the time and work with counsel and her clients to come up with an agreement that was mutually acceptable. And I think that was very beneficial for us. So I wanted to thank her for her time and effort and patience. I think the papers speak for themselves. I think it's been demonstrated that my clients never intended to abandon the use, both in the documents before you and the testimony of Mr. Auerbach. And I would hope that you would grant the special exception. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Suchi. We will close this item and move on to item C on our agenda.
2012-17-03, Catherine B. Conover, 99 Perry Avenue. Variance for dormer requirement and number of stories from 2.5 to 3. Section 118-100, 118-310C in AAA residence zone. The property is located at 99 Perry Avenue, District 5, Block 43, Lot 36A. The applicant proposes a new shed dormer in addition to expand and replace the existing dog house dormers at the western side of the residence. Variance is needed for both number of stories and dormer restrictions. No changes to footprint are proposed. Background: this is an interior lot with the south side elevation facing Springwood Court, which is the zoning front. Number of stories are calculated from the zoning front. The proposed shed dormer would be on the half story, which is already technically a 3rd story by definition. This house is existing, non-conforming with stories, dormer setbacks, and footprint encroachments on side and rear setbacks. The front entrance to the residence actually faces toward the easterly side of the property line. Tax records indicate the house was built around 1929. Analysis and findings of the staff, it could be considered a hardship that the house was probably built prior to the zoning regulations, which became effective in October 16, 1929. In addition, if the loss of the portion of the property facing Perry Avenue was due to the state taking, then that could be seen as an additional hardship. Ready to proceed, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Will the applicant or representative please step forward and identify themselves?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Liz Suchy, a partner at Carmody, Torrance, Sandak and Hennessy, 707 Summer Street, Stamford, Connecticut. And I represent the owner, Kathleen Conover. On the call this evening is Mrs. Conover, her husband, Steve Conover, one of my partners, and Patricia Gill, architect with Gill and Gill Architect, who you will hear from in just a couple of minutes. Neighbors were notified of the public hearing that was originally scheduled for December 17th. On December 3rd, by certified mail, return receipt requested, and the green cards were returned to staff days before that scheduled December 17th meeting, and they should be in the file. In addition, my clients contacted their neighbors personally with respect to their proposal, and I believe there are several letters from neighbors in support of the project, which I hope you would read into the record at the appropriate time. Mrs. Conover, as is indicated, owns the property at 99 Perry Avenue. Actually, the property now fronts on Springwood Court or Victoria Lane, depending upon what map you look at. It is District 5, Block 43, Lot 36A, AAA resident zone. The lot size is 1.1 acres. The property was originally part of a large family compound dating to prior to the 1940s that had more than 6 or 7 acres. And this lot was in excess of 2 acres at the time. The house has been indicated was built around 1929, and we believe before the enactment of zoning in October of that year. And at that time, the dwelling that the Conovers own was oriented toward Perry Avenue. So the zoning front was on Perry Avenue because that was the narrower of the lot frontages. The original owners of the properties created what was called a family subdivision, and those are just not seen anymore. They were opportunities for families to kind of create lots on family compounds that did not have to go through any sort of subdivision regulations. And then they created lots that didn't necessarily comply with the regulations and created all sorts of issues later on. Those are no longer in force and effect, and they no longer can, owners can no longer avail themselves of that option. Moreover, in the 1970s, the state used its powers of eminent domain to take properties for the Merit 7 cloverleaf construction, and part of it was some of the properties along Perry Avenue, including the parcel that was taken off the 2 acres that originally constituted the Conover lot. So, and under the state's original plan, Perry Avenue was going to move, and then the Merritt Parkway would be expanded. So the 0.95 acre parcel adjacent to the Conover's property to the east was among several of those properties taken for that Merit 7 renovation. The result of which is that the front of the zoning front and the frontage is no longer on Perry Avenue, but on Springwood Court or Victoria Lane. And that creates a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship for my clients to comply with the number of story restriction in the zoning regulations. And the reason for that is since the zoning front is now on Springwood Court, the number of stories is then calculated from what exists facing Springwood Court. The first floor is a garage. The second floor is actually the dwelling's first floor. And the third floor is actually the dwelling's second floor. And the reason I say that that first floor garage is a full floor, is because the ceiling of that floor is more than 3 feet above the average elevation of that facade that faces Victoria Lane, Springwood Court. That makes it a full story. So the structure, although it faces Perry Avenue, and when it was constructed, looks and smells and acts like a 2.5 story structure. Now that the zoning front is on Springwood and the number of stories is to be measured from Springwood, it is in fact a 3-story structure. So that's the first issue. The other issue is the dwelling exists in in the rear along the back property or the northern property line, it intrudes into the setback, but that's existed since the structure was originally constructed. So the proposal before you this evening is that the Conovers would like to add some additional space on what is the second floor of the house, albeit the third floor when you count the stories from Springwood, so that they can create an additional bathroom. At this point, I'd like, if possible, either staff or perhaps Patsy Gill, could you call up the one of Patsy Gill's floor plans so you can see what's being proposed? Patsy, if you could call that up, that would be great.
Okay.
While she's doing that, I'll also indicate to you that the uppermost floor is more than 50% of the floor directly below it. Since it's more, it trips that calculation, actually, it's more than 60%. It constitutes a full story as well. So all of these different technical applications of the zoning regulations create practical difficulties and unnecessary hardships for my clients to do virtually anything in terms of renovations or additions to the dwelling. As was indicated in the original statement that was read into the record, there's no expansion of the footprint. There's no additional second story or third story being built. The footprint will remain the same. It's actually interior work that's being proposed with the creation of a dormer to provide that additional space that Mr. and Mrs. Conover would like to create on the dwelling.
Right, so I'm not sure how to share my screen, but this is, this is the front of the house. It really looks more like a 1.5 story house than a 3-story house. And we're putting a dormer on the back side. So this is the back of the house, and so these 2 little dormers are going to be expanded and turned into a shed dormer over on this side. So it won't be even visible from most areas of the lot.
And by virtue of the definition of dormer, there's a certain calculation of how much space along that roof line that can be occupied by the dormer. And the proposal is slightly over that 50% rule along that roof line. It's, I believe, 59%. So of course, a variance would be necessary since the 50% is being tripped by virtue of this design. Patsy, could you just explain that a little bit better than articulately?
So the dormer is only this portion of the house. The house continues way over here, which is the area that has the garage underneath it. But for the calculation of the total ridge or whatever for the dormer, we couldn't even count this whole portion of the house. We're only counting the main body of the house. So that's why it's too big of a dormer to count as a dormer. It's just a full story, I guess.
That roof line is 38 feet and the proposed dormer would be 22.6. So it exceeds that 50% maximum amount that it can occupy on the roof, hence a need for a variance of that specific section of the regulations. If the entirety of the roof, both the main and the adjoining roof line, could be counted instead of just that one section, it would be under the 50% by quite a bit. But we are unable to use that calculation toward the dormer definition and application. So as you know, under under section 1A101410B, you may vary regulations upon the demonstration of practical difficulties and unnecessary hardships created by the application of the regulations, when the request is in harmony with the general purpose of the regulations, so that substantial justice is achieved in a manner to secure the public health, welfare, and safety. We believe that just the way in which this property was originally constituted, how it changed by virtue of the state acquisition of land for the route for the Merritt Parkway expansion and Cloverleaf renovation, and the subsequent and associated difference in how the front setback is determined, and therefore how the number of stories is calculated, all are practical difficulties and unnecessary hardships that support the request for variance. If you have any questions of me or Mr. or Mrs. Conover or Pat Gill, we're certainly happy to answer them. And I believe the
Any
letters
board
that
member
were provided are in support of this proposal, largely because for all intents and purposes, the addition of the dormer is rather benign and would not be viewed as something intrusive to the neighbors who exist and who are most proximate to the property.
Okay, I don't have any specific question. Do any other board members have questions of the applicant?
Now, we have 3 letters though.
Yes, I was going to ask you to read them into the record.
Yeah, the first, Lee Levy, Chair on Zoning Board of Appeal. Kathleen Conover, 99 Perry Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut, application for variance. Dear Mr. Levy, my name is Lucy W. Corwin. I reside at 1 Studio Lane, Norwalk, Connecticut, which is adjacent to the property owned by Kathy Conover at 99 Perry Avenue. Ms. Conover has advised me of her plan to create additional space within the second floor of the home by constructing a dormer. I understand that to achieve this, it is necessary for Mrs. Conover to obtain variances from the City of Norwalk zoning regulation. I have no objection to her plans and support her request for variance. Signed, Lucy W. Corwin. The Levy Zoning Board of Appeals, City of Norwalk, Kathy Conover, 99 Perry Avenue, application for variance. Dear Mr. Levy, my name is Einar Binga Sorensen, and I reside at 3 Studio Lane, which is adjacent to the property owned by Kathy Conover at 99 Perry Avenue. Ms. Conover has advised me of her plan to create additional space within the second floor of her home by constructing a dormer. I understand that to achieve this, it is necessary for Mrs. Conover to obtain variances of the City of Norwalk zoning regulations. I have no objection to her plans and support her request for variances. Very truly yours, Einar Vinga Sorensen. The Levy Zoning Board of Appeals, City of Norwalk, Kathy Conover, 99 Perry Avenue, Norwalk, Connecticut, application for variance, Mr. Levy. My name is, I can't read the last name particularly well, Jeanette McKenzie, and I reside at 5 Studio Lane, which is adjacent to the property owned by Kathy Conover at 99 Perry Avenue in Norwalk, Connecticut. Ms. Conover has advised me of her plan to create additional space within the second floor of her home by constructing a dormer. I understand that to achieve this, it's necessary for Ms. Conover to obtain variances of the City of Norwalk zoning regulations. I have no objection to her plans and support her request for variance. Very truly yours, Jeanette. And I'm going to slaughter it again, Mirakinsey. And those are the
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Again, anyone wishes to speak in favor of this application? Hearing none, I'll ask if there is anybody wishing to speak against this application tonight. Hearing none, I'll turn it back to Ms. Suchi for her final comments. Ms. Suchi?
Sorry, hearing no comments in opposition and seeing that there aren't any other questions by the board of myself, Patsy Gill, or Mr. and Mrs. Conover, we have nothing further to add, but would ask that you grant the variance as requested this evening. Thank you for your time and a happy new year to everyone, and hope that it's a healthy and safe one.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, moving on to the next item. At 154 West Rocks Road. Would you read the application?
So if you can hear me now.
Andy, you're muted.
Andy?
He's muted. Michelle, can you unmute him, Michelle?
I'm prompting him to unmute, but
Okay.
Poke him real good.
Hear you, Andy.
There we go.
Ah.
Yeah, when you poke me, actually the poke takes over my screen.
Okay. Would you read the next application?
Yeah, 2012-1704. Ioannis and Anastasia Kadonis. Variance of parking requirement to allow parking in the front setback. And a AA residence zone located in 154 West Rocks Road, District 5, Block 23, Lot 14. Applicant is requesting a variance to allow an existing driveway within the front setback to remain. Background: permit for 2-car attached garage was obtained in 2004, and staff indicated that the existing drive was to be removed and restored to grass. The final inspections were not made by building inspectors or zoning inspectors. The homeowner applied for a pool permit this summer and was instructed to close the previous permits and remedy the parking issue. The circular driveway does not appear on the 1978 topographic map. The applicant may have purchased the property in this condition, but there was no approval for the circular driveway and staff cannot waive the parking requirement. Analysis and findings of the staff. The parking configuration as it exists is in violation of regulation in contravention of the 2004 zoning permit stipulation that it be removed. The applicant has a home daycare without an associated zoning permit. The driveway issue would either need to be connected or variance granted in order to obtain a zoning permit for the daycare. Staff recommended to applicant to provide a copy of the state license for the daycare that has not been provided as yet. I don't know if that's still true. However, the applicant has provided an updated survey as requested. The current survey is dated January 6, 2021. It should be noted that the previous zoning inspector has approved a turnaround key in lieu of the full circular driveway. That completes it, but Tammy, didn't we get a copy of their
We did. We got their state license, the copy of their state license for the daycare received in the office, or received via email today, which I forwarded.
Okay, good. All right, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, will the applicant or representative please step forward and identify themselves?
Good evening, Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Ioannis John Kadonis and my wife Anastasia Kadonis. So yes, we are applying for a variance to allow for our driveway to stay in its existing format. Just to kind of give you a, Andrew kind of read over the report, but just to let you know, back in 2004, we bought the house. I believe it was in February. And our contractor did pull a permit for the garage. We did get the structural, inspection done. I called for the final inspection to be done. However, I forgot to label the panels at the time. And so kind of went back, relabeled the panels and just got busy, honestly, and just forgot to call them back. In 2005, though, we did pull another permit to pave the driveway, and it was granted by the city of Norwalk. The driveway did get paved, and at the same time, if you looked at the new survey that was issued, in front of that house, there was 2 curbs that were put in, they're actually flower beds. So I'm assuming maybe they were told at the time that would eliminate the parking in the front setback. So yeah, at the time the permit was pulled, we did go through, we did try to pull a pool permit this summer, and you know, we kind of just went through some issues, and that's when it was brought up that the permit wasn't closed for the garage. So I went through the building inspection, they did approve it. However, I ran into the issue with the driveway. You know, been here for 16 years. Unfortunately, you know, it was the first time I've heard of the parking violation. I do understand as being a homeowner, I am responsible, you know, for any issues that arise, you know, but the contractor never informed me. I've had, you know, when the building came out to inspect the garage, nobody mentioned it to me. You know, we've had some issues where, you know, the neighbor in the back at the time when that house was bought, he basically put up a berm on my backyard on the property line. So it was flooding my yard at, you know, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. So I did have, you know, Department of Public Works, you know, zoning come out. And even then still never mentioned to me that, you know, I had a violation until this past summer. We were, you know, kind of going back and forth. So in theory, basically what I'm looking for is to kind of just, you know, keep the driveway the way it is. Where my house is located on West Rocks, there's a slight bend on the road. It's literally right across Wenbo's gate. So where they're asking us to kind of like pull out, it's dangerous. It is kind of like a slight blind spot, you know, especially from, you know, my wife. I'm gonna have a son who's going for his license next month. He's gonna start driving. And basically I'm asking for just to kind of keep the driveway for just, you know, at this point, it's just safety issues, you know, for me, my family, you know, the parents that come in and out of the driveway to drop their kids off at, you know, at our daycare, my wife's daycare, not mine. Trying to think. Yeah, and you know, I went back, you know, on the city's website using that GIS map function. I noticed that the driveway it wasn't paved at the time, but it was existing as a circular driveway going back to like 1995. Anything else you want to add?
No, I just feel like we've been here, this is going to be 17 years come February. And like my husband said, this was the first that we've heard about this, which was over the summer. And I feel that if we shut that side of the driveway where they're telling us, I feel like it's a hazard because we are on a bend. And when you're driving down West Rocks, it's very dangerous to back out of that driveway. I mean, speed limit is 30. No one ever drives 30 down West Rocks Road. I mean, normal people do, but other people don't. And if to see us having to back out of that driveway, it's just not safe. It's not safe for my 16-year-old son, not safe for me, not safe for my husband. I have parents that come in and out of my driveway every day to drop off infants and toddlers at my home daycare. And I feel that I won't even have room for them to pull in if we have to shut that driveway. And how are they going to back out? So it's the safety of my families that I am protecting and the safety of my family that I have. And like I said, it's been here 17 years. My neighbors, nobody has a problem with it. They've never once contacted City Hall to say, hey, what's going on? The wall that was put in years before we even bought the home, the stone wall in front of our home, that was existing when we bought the home. So it was there. We didn't do anything to it. And if we knew that that wasn't allowed at that time and they did that illegal, we would have rethought buying this home 17 years ago, to be honest with you. But to know that we can pull in and pull out, it gives me a peace of mind.
How long have you had the daycare in the house?
I'm going on 2 years right now.
Okay.
Actually, it's 2.5 years. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, 2 years?
No,
Is it 2 years?
You started it this year.
Yeah.
Last year.
So 2 years.
Has it been 2 years? Oh my God, it was, we did go for the summer.
And I have children here. I have a state license that I sent over.
Yes.
I'm sorry that took so long, and I do have it. And you know, to know that to think that parents have to back out of that driveway, it's just not safe. I mean, it's not safe at all. Like my husband said, we had a problem with the owner in our backyard.
That has no relevance.
No, it has
tonight.
no relevance, but my
So
point is,
don't even bring it up.
okay, but when people pull in, they pull out because they, you know, it's just a safer way to leave my driveway. And as parents pull in to drop off their children, they leave right out of our driveway. My concern, I'm not nervous because I know they're not backing out.
Have you done anything about having somebody look at the allowable driveway area to reconfigure it for better egress than you currently have?
So when, I think it was Aileen who sent us on that, that turnaround, what they call it, I believe it, like a turnaround key. She sent me the dimensions of it. And, you know, we did measure it, and to have the 2-car garage and have a 3rd car in there, it would literally be, you know, impossible to kind of pull out of the driveway. And then especially if, you know, we have cars coming in and out during the day, you know, in the morning, especially during rush hour traffic, especially if, you know, if there's, you know, if the school's reopen and you know that West Rocks is busy, it would literally be impossible to try to maneuver in and out of that driveway without backing out, you know, with your rear of the car.
Well, you've submitted, I've seen a couple of diagrams of your driveway, and nothing on those sketches shows me how anybody studied where the parking is and how to maneuver a car in the driveway.
No, not on the actual survey. So basically, the original survey I provided was the one that we got from 2004. And then this one that we just did, the study that we did was kind of just done, you know, outside with.
Well, that really would have helped us to make a decision if you had a sketch or a layout showing how you could get your required parking. And
the thing is, I don't need any additional parking. I have my two parking in the.
I know, but legal parking in the front yard, that's part of this request you're making.
Well, this is not parking.
But where would that's what I'm kind of.
Don't ask me where you would put it. We're asking you.
But my parking would be in the garage. I have my 2-car garage there.
Well, you're being asked to show that you're not parking within the required front yard setback.
Right.
I just need to be shown that.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time like following you. Like, wouldn't my garage that I have on the
No.
left?
On site, not in your garage. Your garage is perfectly legal.
Okay.
You have to prove to us that there's going to be no parking within the front yard setback.
How do we?
Lee, just listening to this here, how would they go about doing that? Like, what would be the next step for them to show that to us?
Well, I mean, if they've got a friend that knows how to draw, a surveyor, somebody to show us that, you know, for the daycare, they're not parking within the front yard setback.
The daycare is literally just a drop off.
It's a drop off circle.
Yeah, there's no other employees that work. My wife is the only employee in her daycare. So she's only limited to 6 kids, 2 of them being under 2. She literally has 5 kids. So there's no other employee, there's no cars in my driveway.
There's no cars in the driveway. They're just pulling in and pulling out.
Tammy, am I missing something here?
Yeah, I think Lee, you think they're required to provide an additional spot, but they don't
Okay.
so they do have parking within the garage, but the issue that we face with folks all the time is not understanding that that our regulations limit the amount of access driveway. So right now, they've got a huge swath of access driveway. Their 2005 repaving permit notes that there was no
The circular driveway was, one of the curb cuts was to be eliminated.
right.
Okay?
And, yeah.
So, two questions for you, John. Who pulled the 2004 permit for the garage? Like, is that you or is that the prior owner?
No, it was actually, I mean, it was a contractor that I hired to put the garage up.
Okay. But like, just so I'm clear, so 2004, you paid a contractor to do something in your garage. In that actual permit, it stipulated that the parking configuration needed to be removed.
Well, yeah, so what happened was the first time I saw that application was this past summer. Which that's why, hence why I'm here. It literally just caught me by surprise because I was, for 16 years, never under the impression that I had a parking violation.
Yeah, I think, I can understand how this is problematic for you. But if I go back to the 2004 permit, my assumption would be, and probably Tammy, you could correct me here, is that if that stipulation on it being removed wasn't in there, you wouldn't have got the permit. Would be my guess. And so we have the 2004 permit where it's in there, and whether you saw the permit or not, you own the house then.
Right.
And then there's a paving permit where it says the same thing. So, my only thought would be like, it said it twice.
But where on the permit did it say it on the 2000, the driveway one?
I don't have that in front of me. I think Tammy, you might.
Yeah, give me just a second.
And John, like, I don't want to feel like we're really like, busting your stones on this, but we get a lot of people that just kind of create their own driveways. And, they do circles, they do more parking, and it's problematic because like we start approving one, then we have to approve the other, and then your neighbors say, well, we want to do it.
Yeah,
so it creates a precedent.
And I completely understand that. But what I'm trying to tell you is like I've been here for 17 years. My neighbors to the right have been here for 30 plus years, and they've told me that the driveway has been in this format at least 25 years. So I wasn't creating anything. It's literally, I got the permit from the city, they paved it, and literally I just want to leave it the way it is. I don't want to change anything.
Yeah.
We don't want to make it where we can park cars there. That's not what we're saying. We just want to be able to back out of our driveway and exit that way, like a circular driveway, because it's very dangerous. It's a bend on Wenbo's Gates. I mean, it's a bend and it's very dangerous when you back out of our driveway that way. I mean,
if you were to eliminate what I perceive as the southern driveway and left the northern driveway entrance, would that work any better for you?
From the driveway, how are we going to pull into our garage that way?
I'm just trying to offer.
I know, I appreciate it. I mean, we've never ever had problems. I mean, with neighbors or anything.
The problem that has arisen is that you didn't look at the building permit for the garage. The city missed it on their inspection or failed to inspect because it wasn't, a final inspection wasn't called.
Correct.
That's a problem. And now the difficulty for you is trying to rectify it well after the fact.
Right.
So it does note on the Public Works repaving permit, it says notes. The sketch for this driveway permit shows a circular drive. No inspection seems to have been completed for this project. No site review seems to have been completed for this project. They question, is the center line of each driveway lane on this parcel 50 feet apart? Now, those are public works notes. So typically we would review before this gets approved by Public Works. I'm not sure. In this, there's a note that says, this is again from 2005. It says the applicant claims they never received copy of this permit of the Public Works after multiple conversations with Carol from P&S Paving. And so I don't know if they granted this repaving permit after the fact. That's the way I read it, but I'm not sure.
Hey, Tammy,
Did
was
they
the,
get a permit to repave?
That's what they did give us a copy of this 2005, which does show it's a repaving permit, but
Okay.
I think it's an after the fact repaving permit.
Okay.
was the 2004 permit closed out? Like
No,
final inspection done?
no.
No, because
Probably wasn't done because if they came back, they would have looked at the driveway and said, we can't give you your CO for that until the
no,
driveway is.
what happened was I didn't have the panels labeled when we had that. So I ended up, labeling the panels, and I have, confirmation from the building inspection that they approved, the structure of the garage.
So you still have an open permit on the garage?
On the garage, right.
That isn't good.
Well, yeah, I tried to close it, going through this whole.
Now you got a driveway problem.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, this is an item, a part of this that we need to discuss after we close this hearing. As
Yeah, I don't have any more questions.
what our procedure needs to be. Because on one hand, I think if we approve the variance for the driveway, we're actually in violation of the fact that there isn't a CO on the project.
Did you talk to Mr. Billy?
we can close this CO. Well, if we're talking just.
Yeah,
on
but we're sitting here
construction,
tonight,
I
in
understand. If
public
we're talking-
hearing, trying to address your request for a variance. I don't think we can do that.
Well, I understand. What I'm saying is when I talked to Mr. Ireland, he's okay with, he gave his blessing that this building approves, the final inspection of the garage.
Has the electrical inspector been in to look at the panel?
Yes, everything got inspected. The only thing I didn't do was label it at the time.
Okay, well, then you don't have a CO
I understand.
because he hasn't inspected that.
It is inspected now. It wasn't inspected at the time after the completion.
Okay,
The original, when I originally called them.
okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Tammy, I presume that a recommendation was made as to how to configure the driveway. What was that recommendation?
The recommendation was to remove portions of the driveway and then allowing for a turnkey to accommodate the egress, safe egress.
Yeah,
But
so
they would
not
eliminate-
part of the circle, but a key that would let them back in and out of the key. from the
Correct.
garage.
They're often called hammerheads, but yeah.
Yeah,
So
But
the
the hammerhead
second
would be
curb
more
cut
toward the
would
road.
be eliminated.
but
Yes.
the hammerhead would be more toward the road, correct?
Or they could use, the plan utilized a portion of the existing sort of arch, I guess, for lack of a better term.
And I'm just trying to figure out if you have a bunch of people dropping kids off, how can you make that safe? I can understand the double curb cut problem. And trying to eliminate one would be a good thing, but I do have the question on how you keep pick up and drop off of the children safe.
That's my concern right now, because I have parents who pull in starting 7 a.m. They pull into the circle, I grab their child, they bring it to the door, I grab them, and then they pull right out. And then I have 6 total, all in the morning. And if these parents have to back out of my driveway, I mean, I don't even know how that can even happen. It's just, it's a safety issue. It's
Yeah,
just a,
there's another safety issue on your property besides that, and that is you got evergreens all along the front.
yeah, and
They're very
There's
substantial.
no visibility.
Yeah, there's no visibility there, and you got to solve that also.
The evergreens?
All along the front of your property.
Right, so I.
Well, they don't necessarily have to solve that.
that
I
keeps all the
can't-
sound
I
out.
can't have evergreens in front. I mean, I trim them on the sides of the, the openings to make sure that there's visibility that way.
And believe it or not, those evergreens keep a lot of sound out
That's-
from my
yeah,
home.
that's beside the
I'm sure it does.
That's great. I'm just talking, you want to talk about driving and safety on the roadway and pulling in and out of your property, then if you make it difficult to see down the road when you're pulling out, that's difficult. That's a problem, and it needs to
Yeah,
be.
but any, if those evergreens, if they overhang the wall, I trim those. I cut them to make sure that we can get some type of visibility that way. So I
But
mean,
you
if you
do know
were,
that it is an issue.
if you were to drive by, especially on the side with the garage, those are trimmed pretty much up to the wall, and the same thing on the opposite side. So I clean that area out to give me the visibility to pull out of my driveway.
At any rate, I do think that the circle helps with pulling in and out and the safety of dropping kids on and off. Otherwise, I would agree with the key, but I don't agree with the key when you're dropping people on and off with the babysitter or childcare.
Hey, so just from a time perspective, I think we have 4 minutes or 5 minutes and then we can't hear any more. So I think that's
Well,
correct,
let's-
right? After 9:30, can't hear any new ones.
Yes. Let's finish up this application.
Okay.
And we'll address that. Anyone else on the board wish to enter in this discussion? Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in support of this application? Any member of the public wish to speak against this application? Well, hearing none, John, do you wish to say anything further before we close out?
No, I do not. I'm fine.
Okay, this item is closed. It is almost 9:30, which by our own guidelines tells us we cannot begin any further items on the agenda.
I think we can do it. We just can't start one after it's before 9:30. So I think we can
Hey,
still hear the
if
McMahon
anybody
one.
wishes to hear the next application, I'm willing to go ahead.
Good,
Yeah.
let's do it.
I am too.
Andy, if you would read the,
Got it. 210121-01, City of Norwalk. Variance of illumination restriction for athletic field lighting in B residence zone. Property located at 288 Highland Avenue, District 5, Lot B1. Block B1, Lot 156. Applicant's request is seeking a variance of the regulation limiting the light level at the property line of an athletic field to 0.3 candles. Background: this athletic field is located behind McMahon High School. The proposed lighting is necessary for safety of the players. Incidentally, that athletic field is right off the street of Highland. It could be seen as a hardship if this is the staff report. It could be seen as a hardship that there is not an available alternative location for the field. It's not one within the city budget. All done.
okay, will the representative for the city of Norwalk please come forward and identify themselves?
Sure. So thank you, Chairman. My name is Nick Roberts. I am the Director of Recreation and Parks for the City of Norwalk. On the call, I also have our Park Superintendent, I have our senior project engineer from DPW, as well as Jeff Olowitsky from Stantec, who is the project designer. I'll make this brief. As noted, the request is for a variance to the lighting threshold allowed onto the adjacent properties to the softball and McMahon. There are 10 properties impacted by the proposed lighting levels, one being the city of Norwalk. We sent out certified mailings to those 10 individuals, in which we received 5 receipts back. This is an approved capital budget for the city to renovate the field from a grass field to turf with the addition of lights. The primary user is Brian McMahon softball team, the girls, as well as our recreational youth programs who utilize the space after hours and on the weekends. I'll turn it over to Jeff from Stantec. He'll be able to provide a little bit more in-depth detail on the project itself, and we'll be here to answer any questions.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to kind of sneak in under the 9:30 deadlies presented. Can everyone see my screen at this point? Show it. Okay, great. Thank you. So Brian McMahon High School, Highland Avenue. About a decade ago, the high school itself was renovated. There was a new addition, Center for Global Studies, that was added to the building. Reconfiguration of the parking lot, acquisition of the property that you see here with the existing softball field and the resulting natural grass field that's there now. I happen to have worked on that project as well at the time, so quite familiar with the circulation site as well as other challenges with the field. Currently, the field located within the lawn area, the backstop being in the southwest, directly on Highland, directly adjacent to the property that's there, and facing north towards the school. And what we're proposing is a conversion of this athletic field to artificial turf, not only for softball, for more consistent use minus the weather, but also for an expansion to allow for other sports to be able to play on it or practice on it in some sort of capacity. This is the only softball field that's located on the site. We currently have a baseball field that overlaps with the soccer practice field and track and field events area that was just recently done, I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe less. And that facility has sports lighting as well as the track. So in looking at this, understanding the fact that the main concentration of noise that usually comes from a ball field is located where the backstop is. The dugouts are immediately there, and then just outside of that are the bleacher areas. So in looking at the field, we went ahead and explored an option, keeping it where it is, maintaining the same kind of grade, but just simply expanding the artificial turf, and then adding in sports lighting to meet the level of sport that's being played here and the requirements for NFHS high school level athletics for softball. And in looking at that, we evaluated initially, understood obviously that this is such a confined area that the poles are going to be very close. Therefore, regardless of all the new technology, which is amazing that we have with athletic field lighting, it's still going to be difficult to meet that threshold. So what we did is this was the initial option, and then we explored a secondary option that I'm scrolling to now. Just give me a second. Sorry about that. So then there's, and what I'll do is I'll zoom in just a little bit so we can see where we're at. So what this does is essentially flips home plate to where center field was and vice versa. This really kind of moves the main gathering area, the dugouts and the bleachers and behind home plate more into the school property, hopefully reducing, the intention is to reduce the noise that's actually on Highland What it also does, it allows us to tuck in the lights a little bit more into the property with only one out here versus the other two. But again, similar to the other one, given the confines of the site, we are, we have limited space to sort of achieve that 0.3 cutoff, and hence the reason why we're here. Both of these options, and this is the preferred option, both by the AD, the school, and everyone who has contributed to it, simply because it adds a larger venue, more active space, as you can see in here, for a full size, or I'm sorry, half size field hockey field, so that the field can serve a dual purpose for practice, and then obviously, full-time softball with all of the appropriate amenities that the baseball field has in comparison. So what I want to do now is I'm going to have Mike Mahoney. If Mike, are you on the line?
I am, Jeff.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to do is I think, Mike, what we'll do is let's explore this one, and we'll discuss the property line, the main areas right here, and I can zoom in and pan around. And then what we'll do is we'll discuss the secondary option and the difference between the two.
Sure. So for the record, Mike Mahoney, Musco Sports Lighting. And as Jeff zooms in here, especially towards the first base A pole location, so A2, that is the closest pole location to an adjacent property line. So, and you can see there we're around the high point 5 to 6 foot candles horizontal on that property line, because that pole location is so close to the property line. It's just impossible to reduce light, because with LED we're taking so much of the light out of the sky. Typically you'd see a lot of illuminance being emitted skyward. You would know for miles around if there was a ball game going on because of all the light that was going into the sky glow. Now we've harnessed all that light and we're pushing it all down onto the field, so there's virtually no light going skyward. All that light's being pushed down onto the field. The one, I don't want to say downside because it's really a positive, but because so much of the light is being pushed down onto the field surface, we get a lot of light down in front of the pole and just behind the pole. So you'll see that 4 or 5 foot candles behind that A2 location in particular, as well as A1, but there's more of a buffer there between that location and a property line. So these locations, less than ideal, I guess, if you could say, because of the location to adjacent properties, which really benefits the alternative location, swapping to home plate being in the current center field.
You want me to switch to that plan?
Sure. Yeah. And so you can see now that nearest property location we were previously referencing, we've reduced that horizontal foot candle level by at least 50%. So we're down to I think looks like 3.3 is the highest level. And just to give you a bit of reference, a front porch light, a 60-watt front porch light will provide around 3 foot candles. So, and also please keep in mind, we are not accounting for any blockage So we're assuming this field location is in the middle of a desert. There's no accounting for any plantings, any leaves, trees, etc. And as I'm sure Jeff can attest to, there's quite a bit of growth throughout that property line.
Yeah, this whole area, the general topography difference between this field in some of these areas around here is about 6 feet by the time you get to the field, slightly less down here. But also it's important to note that this area was planted, like I said, about a decade ago with a pretty thick line of evergreens all the way down. Again, but we can't account for that when we're doing a foot candle assessment. We have to assume the ground plane is exactly level. There's no screening, no topography, no nothing. So that's why we're seeing the numbers that we're seeing here versus what may actually be measured if we were to install this and go out there with a light meter at the property line.
Really, the simple reason for that is we as a company, Musco Lighting, we can't guarantee that the plants will be there forever. And when we warranty our product, we're saying you will meet these foot candle level requirements for 25 years. And, you know, I don't think any nursery is going to give you a 25-year warranty on the
Let me interrupt and ask a question. Were those trees planted to screen the neighbors as part of the approval process for the field originally?
I don't believe so because it was an athletic field. It was done as sort of a good neighbor thing to say, look, we understand we're putting an athletic field within 15, 20 feet of your current property line, regardless of the elevation change. Let's be good neighbors and vegetate this slope to give you enough screening so that your backyard is essentially not looking over an athletic field.
Don't you think if those trees died or were cut down for some other purpose, that the neighbors would complain and ask that they be replanted?
I would believe yes. I know if I were that neighbor, I would say yes.
With that in mind. Those
Mr. Chairman, it's Vanessa Valadares, Principal Engineer, DPW. Probably they will, and I would tell you that probably we're gonna listen to them and try to accommodate the request. Under our budget, we have a budget for tree planting that applies to all over the city. And usually we try to plant some trees in some areas that is needed or when we get some requests. So
Good.
if that is the case, we'll definitely can look and also Recs and Parks also have some budget related to tree planting. So we'll definitely look into it and would be able to provide new trees if needed.
Good, but I'm saying that the design of the lighting has to take into account that those trees are there in perpetuity.
Unfortunately, because it's a requirement under planning and zoning, they cannot. At the same time, that would help us a lot, but we are just trying to always show the worst case scenario. Also, I just want to bring to your attention that when we do that calculation, we have to show the candlelight at the property line. And
I understand that.
Yeah, and you know better than the houses are not right next to the property line because of the
Yes, I know.
setbacks. And if you look at our map, you're gonna see that it really drops a lot. As Mike was explaining, this new kind of lighting really brights right down to the ground, very close to the pole. So that's why as soon as you start getting a couple of feet off, the difference in the candlelight, it is big. But today we're here in front of you because unfortunately we try many options. We really scratch our heads to try to not come to this variance. But it's important that we want to bring this to you because unfortunately we couldn't meet the candlelight. I bet that Jeff also gonna share with you about it, but also in the same area, we have the baseball field that is a little bit south of it. And we just want to bring to your attention that that field is also lighted, and probably it was lighted prior to this requirement from P&Z. And I'll let them show to you what is the candlelight that we get from that baseball field. Jeff, maybe what you can do, if you don't mind, if you open your Google Earth, maybe if you can have a aerial image showing where is one field related to the other.
Sure, absolutely.
I just want to show that already in that very close area, the baseball field is already there, and we have the candlelight above and beyond also the minimum requirements, and we haven't got any complaints about it. And I believe that this field has been there for at least the lighting for a good few years already.
Can I ask Tammy a real quick question?
Sure.
Tammy, I recollect when the school was redone that the field that was there, which is primarily used for pickup soccer games, was in the center of the front parking lot. That was torn out, parking was put in. The field was recreated off to, as you're facing the school from Highland to the right. And they didn't have enough room, so we had a house condemned, if I recall correctly. And that created enough field to create a small softball field for, I think it was girls softball particularly, but other things too. And I thought there was a stipulation at the time with the remaining neighbor that it would only be by that.
No, I'm not certain about that. I was just going to say that the lighting restrictions came in 2011. That was the amendment for that. I don't have any knowledge of the work done there before that. What year? You know, I've only been there 4 years. I don't know what year that was done.
Yeah, I don't either. It wasn't all that long ago, but it was further back, a couple of years anyway. And I thought there was a big fuss about it being an adequate field.
I'm
Some
not
of the
certain.
folks at the school thought that it wasn't up to snuff, and they just decided it would be a practice field.
Certain about that. Vanessa, do you know?
I
Anyway,
don't.
so that would mean if there's a restriction, it'd only be used in daylight. We should know about that.
We are not aware of that, but definitely we can check. But here we are coming here for the variance, and if you guys approve the variance, we still need to go for a special permit for the use of lighting. So let's say if that restriction is on, we still have time to look into it before we move forward and get the special permit for lighting the field. I just want to remind you that.
I think I wouldn't have a problem approving it contingent upon there being no restriction existing.
I definitely agree with that. Jeff, unfortunately, we cannot see the area. I'm not sure if you have it on your screen. Maybe you need
I'm
to.
sorry.
Is that sometimes the Zoom?
Yeah, let me
you have to
try doing
get out
that again.
and back in.
Sorry about that. Okay, here we go. Can everyone see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, this is the current softball field area. This is the recently renovated baseball and pit area that has soccer field events in baseball. When this was renovated, the existing light poles remained in place, and the redesign of the field was worked around those, obviously for cost and a variety of reasons. So the property line that we're going to look at is really the one that comes up the new bus Q loop and the access drive that comes down to the field and then runs south along the pit. So I'll stop sharing this and then I'll start sharing that so that we can see the two. So this is the baseball field. This is the existing property as it was prior because the light poles were installed prior to the renovation of the high school. So the new bus access now comes up this way because there was a property modification here, I believe. And then it turns around and goes down this side. And then this is where that pit practice field area is. And you can see again along, the property line, we're pretty much anywhere from 1 to 6 along the immediate. And we have a somewhat similar circumstance at the field. We have half this 6 number based on the newer technology and the lights that we're proposing.
We're well into your presentation, and I have yet to see a computer-generated drawing or photograph of the field with the lighting on it. Do you have something like that?
Do you mean a CAD plan that shows where the light poles are?
Not a CAD plan, a computer-generated photograph of the site, what it will look like with lights on.
No, we do not have that. No.
Then, as far as I am concerned, you're not providing me enough information. I happen to be an architect who is fairly well versed in site lighting and on commercial properties. And I've worked with lighting designers who have presented my commercial clients and the neighbors with computer-generated photographs of what the lighting looks like. Why don't we have that in front of us? In the picture is worth 10,000 words. You've been talking an awful lot, but I have yet to see anything. And this is a visual requirement.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that the appeal about the vision, but to be honest, because it's not a requirement for us to fill the permit.
Yes, but I have the requirement that I need to see this.
I understand. I'm just trying to explain why we don't have it.
Well, I can't approve this until I see it. Not looking at a map or a drawing with lumen numbers on the plan. I need to see what the light is going to look like on the field and with the neighboring properties. And until I see that, I'm voting no. And I know it's preliminary, but we've been 20 minutes into this and I haven't seen anything. I don't know how my fellow board members feel about it, but I don't think you're doing this presentation justice.
Well, I had the issue of whether or not that it was prohibited to begin with. The other issue I have is if these light poles are anything like the ones around the baseball field, I'm going to vote no. Because they're way up in the air and they're brighter than hell.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a school though, right? I mean, kids play
Yeah, but
sports.
right next to a neighbor, right next to
town. There's very limited fields across, so.
And we haven't
I don't know,
heard
look, I'm no
anything
lighting
about
specialist.
time
I'm
limitations.
confused on what a drawing would show me, like in terms of like a reality. I don't know. I guess, I'm a little bit confused on what the ask is.
With all due respect, having a photograph, if you will, of light levels does you no justice when discerning whether an application is viable or not. The only way a planning and zoning board can ascertain whether something is viable is to see the actual calculations. The visual impact.
As laymen, most of the people here are laymen, and they couldn't tell you a lumen from a watt.
I completely agree, and I fight this.
Then you're not showing us what this is.
But unfortunately, those can be manipulated to show whatever benefits either side. So
Well, if you
that's why we
manipulate
use-
it, then you're lying to us.
No.
Right, but that's why we don't even go to that route. We use
Well,
the
you're
actual
gonna have to
facts.
show us something.
What we're showing you is foot candle levels, which is directly in compliance with your regulations.
Correct.
Show me how it's compliant.
You asked for.
If we take the photograph aside for a second, can you answer the pole height issue? Is it the same height as the poles around the baseball field?
They are not the same.
I think there are two questions there from what I am understanding. So I think one request is that they want to see the type of lighting that we're gonna propose for the fields. And I think that's very easy to accomplish. I'm not sure if we have any cut sheets that we can pull it out quick and show them what kind of.
Well, if we don't have cut sheets, we don't see what the fixture looks like. We don't know what the light spread is.
It's the
Is
same.
there a photometric diagram of how the light falls on the neighboring property?
It's the same technology which has been previously approved and installed at Springwood Park Tennis, as well
But I
as.
don't go there.
It's okay. I understand, Mike. I understand. So one thing that you guys want us to provide is kind of a cut sheet showing the type of lighting, right? That is.
And the light spread.
So now, in regards to the light spread, this is a little more complicated because sometimes the photo of the image will not really reflect the reality. And I just want to bring this to your attention because who is going to see those images, they may later come back to us and tell us that the image that we provided is not exactly how it is right in the fields after we install the lights. So that's why it can be a little bit confusing. Because of that, that's the requirement from P&Z that they don't want to see the image. What they want is the calculation. To get to this point of the candlelight, we need to have the lighting consultant, in our case, it's Musco, where they go through a variety of scenarios to try to really figure it out what will be the spread of the candlelight throughout, not only the field, but along the property lines. So exactly. I know it may not visually, it may not be ideally, but it's actually the right way of showing those numbers because this is what the reality will be. Musco can guarantee that if he measures that after, he'll be able to meet the candlelights that are being proposed.
You're speaking an awful lot. I'm not seeing anything.
Right. One thing we can do is we can show representative examples of these specific fixtures on an athletic field and give you an idea of what the light trespass will be in these various distances. That may be an option.
Good.
This way we can give you
now we're
an
starting.
actual photo. Yeah. Right. So maybe that might be a solution rather than trying to manipulate a rendering to try to get it to match a foot candle. So we could show a sort of an actual photo of a light pole being installed and then show what it looks like 20 feet behind it and say, okay, this is what it may be like on the property line.
Yeah, at the appropriate time of night of operation.
Right.
Good.
Yep. And Mike, I know that Musco has a variety of different photos of different scenarios, different athletic fields, and different types of cutoffs, heights, foot candles, and so on. So maybe what we'll do is we'll pull together, some of those images and examples and say that these are probably represent the best, similar scenario.
That's very easy to do.
Okay. Well, I guess because we're not voting on it tonight.
Would that work for you?
That is a good beginning for me.
Okay. So we're gonna try to compile all the information and submit to you.
Yes. Any other board member have an opinion on this?
If anybody has the opportunity to see the baseball field lights lit at night, I think that they should see that. Maybe we have a video of it, but there's a lot of light.
And please keep in mind that technology is now 15 years old. And we're talking about something that's completely different. We're talking about a zero uplight, full cutoff, international dark sky compliant fixture. We're talking literally, and I hate cliches more than anybody, but apples and oranges.
Andy, I think if you go down by like the row 8 and paddle courts, probably not as technically advanced, but I was responsible for the lighting down there years ago, and it used to be just more of a big giant open can of light. Now it's the LED shining direct down. There is a little bit of a halo like any light, but it's much more directed down, and those are big lights. There's 8 across 4 courts, and can you see them? Yeah, but they don't light up the sky like there's a, you know, like there's the Super Bowl going on. So might be a good representation as well.
Yeah, that type of lighting would be very different from what's on the baseball field. Because the baseball field looks like we're welcoming alien visitors.
Like I said, it's a different day and age. Sports lighting has not been immune to advancements in technology.
Good.
So might I suggest that there's an agreement by the applicant to provide additional information, and we have a continuation until next month so that we can address the items that have already been discussed?
I agree to that.
And please try to get the information to us sooner than later, because we're obviously going to have more questions.
We will. As soon, we'll try to get this information as soon as possible. We'll send to Tammy, and then she can distribute to all the board members.
Yeah. Tammy, research the restrictions that were originally placed on the softball field.
I'll do that. And then, so we're going to officially continue the hearing until
Yes,
next.
we will.
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that's your call.
I'm very willing to listen to your call on this. Okay, so I will close this item on the hearing.
Not closing.
We need you to stop sharing.
And we will pick it up again next month.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Okay. That was interesting.
That was.
Shall we go through the items for approval or denial? Go in reverse order. 154 West Rocks Road.
I can understand what the objection of the department is, and I would tend to agree with them. And Public Works probably had an issue with the 2 curb cuts. But if you're going to use that property for daycare, I think you need something like a circular drive.
I would agree. I think that with, the evergreens that they've planted, they've kind of, made a bad situation a little bit more difficult.
They did.
And the fact that they've, I don't want to use the word ignored, but they've
failed to observe.
Yes. Thank you, Keith. Well put. They've got 2 outstanding permits and they've done nothing about it. And I'd like to be able to approve their application, but before I say yes, I'd like to make sure that they have closed out their permits. I don't want to see this drag out any longer for them.
I agree. Yeah, that has to be a tag-along condition.
Yes.
Amy, what would you recommend?
So they're kind of stuck in a vicious cycle here because they can't close out unless remedying. But I think if you just say you'll grant the variance based upon their closing the permit with this condition of variance granted, so that's no longer an issue within, 60 days or something like that.
Yeah, okay.
So I have a comment. So look, I'm sympathetic to what they're trying to accomplish here. I literally have a friend down the street that had the same thing happen to his property. He doesn't have a daycare, but he's got to close the circle. So I'm just wondering, like, what makes this any different, right? I mean, she just opened a business there. We're now, which, I support small businesses, but why should we do that when there are alternatives, right? You could change the entryway, you could change the turnaround there, you could trim the trees. There's a lot of things that could be done there. And I feel like a lot of this has to do with safety, but it can be safely done. So I don't know, I'm just not really aligned with just saying yes to it, because I just kind of feel like we've seen several of these come through, at least I have. And the only thing that makes this different is that someone created a business there and now it makes it unsafe for them. I mean, that's my perspective. I'd love to hear an alternative to that.
Well, Greg, I tried to move them in that direction, suggesting that, they sit down with somebody, whether it's a civil engineer or they know somebody who can draw, and look at the configuration of the driveway to eliminate one of the curb cuts.
Yeah, but the area in the front of the house doesn't provide a lot of room for creative imagination there.
No. And, my concern would also be, if we approve this, how many more circular driveways are we going to get? Well, you approved the one on Rest Rocks,
Yeah, I'm aligned with you, Lee. Like, look, I don't want to create a dangerous situation for them. But I think that, like, approving something like this, and from my perspective, opens up a lot of other questions on other driveways. Because, like, if we approve this, I know my friend, the first thing he's gonna do is like, hey, just approve that. Like, I'm gonna go back, you guys should approve mine. So,
and there's really no hardship here.
No. And I think, the reason why these permits aren't closed is because they know that they couldn't close them because of the driveway. Is my guess.
Could be. But there's also the reliance. If things exist for very long periods of time, there's a reliance that the city knows about it and that it's not an issue.
Yeah, but it was on 2 permits, right? So the city knows about it. It just wasn't, it was ignored.
Well, yeah, they have. I mean, the fact that they haven't called for final inspections, telling me that they didn't call for CO on the garage. I mean, how do you leave a general contractor hanging without a certificate of occupancy? So I think there's something more to this that we don't know.
What was the parking setup before they had the garage built? The 2-car garage?
So they had a garage on the other side. And
they did.
Closed that up to convert to living space and constructed the new garage.
So they tore it down, or they added it to the living space?
They added it to the living space, and so that's where they were supposed to remove that portion of the asphalt.
Right. And is that the current owner that did that?
Yes.
And I think what they were saying when they moved in, it was dirt on one side and asphalt on another, and I think they just paved the whole thing. Is that what you heard, Tammy?
Yeah, I think there was some, the topo maps didn't have that, but they're saying that the GIS shows it in, I think 90, I don't remember the year, but there is something there. So I don't know. I don't know that they did all of that paving, but
Might have just been dirt
yeah.
where they kept driving over the lawn.
Yeah.
Well, the DPW wouldn't care about what you put down on the lot. They're going to care about the curb cuts.
Correct.
And somewhere along the line, I'm getting the impression that DPW was okay with the 2 curb cuts.
Well, they did issue that permit, but it notes odd things. That's why, I mean, there's just something, and it's so long ago, 2005. So and there was no associated zoning sign off for it.
Because if they don't like the curb cut, they become a real pain in the butt. So,
But they're only concerned with the curb cuts. They're not
Right.
concerned with the configuration beyond that. So,
No, and I understand how convenient it is to have the 2 curb cuts, one in, one out.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. You just can't do it.
and this has existed how long? So you know?
well, I think at least 2004 when it was noted on that old survey. So, and that's when they had their foundation as built on there. So, but then again, it was, told by the staff member to remove that. So,
Well, we can do a number of things. We can deny this without prejudice, giving them the direction that you've got to resolve your permit issues and curb cut issues, then come back to us.
well, they wouldn't just be able to close the permits because we'd still, like, the only way they can close the permit is if you grant a variance to maintain that existing parking or asphalt configuration. So then what you could say is, deny without prejudice and come with an alternative plan, I guess.
Yeah, no, that would satisfy me until they figure it out. I mean, somebody has to look at this who is a professional. And, it's got to be solved one way or the other.
I agree with you, Lee. I think, this is more of an observation. Unless they are told that they have to come back, that they have the opportunity to come back, I think the likelihood of them complying is less than 50-50.
Yeah, they could
I
just
think
say,
that
screw it, we'll live with it the way it is.
We witnessed a lot of resistance, a lot of pushback, a lot of, I didn't know, that's an excuse, and you're endangering children. A whole lot of stuff was thrown at the wall. So I think the response has to be simple and definitive. Otherwise, we end up definitive in the sense that defines you've got to do something and come back with a proposal. I don't mean definitive in telling them what to do.
I agree. You've stated it very well. Keith, would you like to put that in form of a question? No,
I was going to say, repeat what you said, which was we will deny it without prejudice. And then you had the phrase, which is now escaping me, for and return to us with a proposal that will allow us to reconsider, essentially.
a proposal for driveway configuration.
Right.
Driveway and parking configuration.
Yeah.
Anyone else wish to add to that?
So you're looking for some sort of professional input to this, right?
Yes.
You gotta
Yes.
say that in your motion.
I mean, let me ask you a separate question. I'm about to agree with you, Keith, but we're basically asking them to come back, get professional help to come back and ask for another variance, right? Like if we denied it, saying, look, you can't have this circle driveway, that doesn't forbid them from going and getting a third party to say, hey, we want to do a turnaround or whatever you mentioned before. Like, why would we go through that knowing that they're not allowed to do that? And then we're just sending them back. You know, if we know they can't have a turnaround, why not just say that you can't have a turnaround? And, you know, I don't know, I'm just kind of confused on like saying no without prejudice and saying, give us another recommendation to get another variance where I think it's comply.
Let me ask Greg a quick question. Greg, what is a turnaround in your definition?
Sorry, it's the circle. I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself. The circle I think has to go. And I think that, Tammy, you're talking about that you pull in, you can turn off to the right, back up. So it's kind of like a little bit of an L. I think that's what was already recommended, or that's if
Right,
they
we
could
call
do.
that, sorry, that's
Yeah.
called a turnkey, but yes,
Turnkey, thank you. And that's something they could do without approval, right?
correct. It's
Yeah.
restricted to 8 by 10 though.
Isn't that what Eileen recommended that they do? You said at the very outset.
Yes.
Anyway, I do agree with the professional taking a look at it if they're going to have kids coming in and out of there. I do think the circular driveway makes a lot of sense, but Greg obviously has an issue with some people getting it, some not.
I think this brings up a lot of issues and, you know, and in a big way, Greg could be very right in saying, let's just deny him the second curb cut and, you know, just recommend that they sit down with a professional to come up with a parking plan that solves their problem.
Wider opening into the street, cut down the trees. I mean, that's something they could do all without us, I believe.
Yeah.
They don't need our input on that.
I think giving them another opportunity with some professional guidance to look for a variance that would allow for the circular driveway is at least a courtesy that we could provide these people. To me, it is clearly the safest design given their business and their circumstances. And I understand precedent and trying to, you know, convince, you know, everyone on the road to put in a circular driveway. But maybe there's someone that could present an argument to us that would satisfy the need for demonstration of a hardship.
Yeah. You know, I don't think you're wrong on what you said, Tad. I would just say, I feel like they've created their own hardship. And now their hardship is our problem. I think it's their problem.
That's right. They should have known. They should read your permits and get them done. But they didn't, and now they got 6 kids in the house.
Remember that tire place from a couple months ago that, you know, I guess we did it without prejudice, but like, you know, you just basically said you can't park in the front, and like, well, we can't operate our business there. Well, you have to find some other place to park. So I don't know. I will, I'll leave it up to someone to go to, you know, have a motion.
Well, you seemingly are leaning toward denial without prejudice, just with the additional language to encourage them to get a design that works without requiring a variance. Is that what you're trying to tell them?
Or clearly demonstrates the hardship. More clearly demonstrates the hardship.
Okay, let me see if I can put this into words. We deny their application without prejudice and request that they come back with, or that, not come back, that they sit down and engage a design professional to work out a driveway and parking plan that does not require a second curb cut, or demonstrate to us clearly that they have a true and genuine hardship with ingress and egress to the property.
Second.
Thank you, because I couldn't repeat that.
Yeah, I thought you might not be able to. You gotta
All in
hurry up
favor
before
of the
I make all
motion on the
break.
floor?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, aye.
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 Okay, motion passes unanimously. Phew. Okay.
Downhill from here.
Item C 20-1217-03, 99 Perry Avenue.
You know, when she's showing the drawings or the holding up the things, it seems like if there's very minimal impact to the environment or to the neighbors. It seems like a massive property. It seems like it's quite old, quite hidden overall. I did not have a problem with it. It seemed reasonable to me to approve it. That's my
I would
perspective.
second approving it.
I would too. The house was built before zoning. There was a taking of property by the state. There were no objections by adjoining property owners. I think that we should approve it.
All right, so I'll make a motion.
In addition, the house is a split level. It's debatable what's a third story and what isn't.
Yeah. It's
All right,
also
so
true.
I'll make a motion if you guys don't mind that essentially says that we will approve this based on the fact of the house is built pre-regulations. The state had taken back some additional land for the Merit 7 building. Yeah, I think that's it.
I'll second
Can
it.
we leave off the Merit 7 building? I don't know why the state took the land. They took the land, period.
They took the land. It doesn't matter what they used it for. Yeah, I
Sure.
agree.
All right, so restate that is that the land was taken by the state.
Fine. I second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Okay, item passes unanimously. B 20-1217-02, 26 Stewart Avenue.
I mean, I guess I have a similar opinion on that. You know, difficult to get tenants nowadays for any type of industrial, retail kind of whatsoever. I didn't necessarily see a problem with it. You know, like the fact that the adjoining neighbors seem to have some sort of agreement in place. They're operating together with a privacy fence and the other things that Ms. Suchi said. So I'm feeling pretty good about that, and you know, would grant I'm in favor of granting their non-conforming status.
I would second
I-
that. Whoop,
Go ahead.
sorry. No, I agree with it as Greg just outlined.
As do I. I think it's a reasonable request. It keeps another property along Connecticut Avenue in play and something that won't become another apartment building.
Okay. Do I need to make a motion on that? Or was that the motion?
Before you do,
That
I
was
just
it.
have,
Yeah, go ahead, Ted. Sorry.
let me ask, does the, would approval set into motion another 1 year timeline for this? Or is there a deadline for them to get it done? Or do we care?
If it's vacant for another year, do they have to do this again?
That's my question.
Tammy?
No, I think by you actually granting the special exception, before it was like a legally non-conforming use, and now it's going to be a special exception for that use, but just the use outlined of, I think it was warehouse and storage office.
Okay, so
Storage
it'll
slash office.
maintain that status. All right, that's great.
Is there any reason to include the piece that Lee had suggested around whatever that agreement was between the neighbors? I didn't quite understand what that was, but is that part of the requirement or not?
No, because remember, they're going to put it on the land record.
Yeah, put it on the land record,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And
So I'll make a motion.
The zoning file.
Okay. Should I make a motion?
Go ahead.
All right, I make a motion that we approve this special exception based upon the challenges in today's environment of finding a new commercial tenant. It seems like they've been working hard on doing that, and also with the support and partnership of the neighbors as well. I suggest that we approve this. Anyone want to second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes unanimously 5-0. Item A, 201217-01 83 East Avenue.
I don't think that there's a way around approving this. I mean, they've done the best they can with that parking lot, and I think have submitted a design that works as well as anyone could expect.
I think ownership of the property confounded the issue, because I used to go to a dock there and there was a problem parking. And when I examined it, when I went to City Hall and examined it, there was an agreement with the adjoining property owners to allow parking on their property. And I'm sure that's how the original numbers were created. It's not just on 83.
It's funny because I used to go to a doctor there as well, and I was about to mention how every time I go there, there's less than half the parking spots taken. So I didn't really see much of a problem, and I guess you had the opposite reaction.
That's the difference in time between you going there and me going there.
Well, I asked the question initially about, the property survey, and did what was shown on the original survey jive with today's survey in terms of the size of the property? And because land just doesn't disappear.
No, it doesn't. But he told you when he went through that exercise, although he did it quickly, that they had an agreement with the property next door might have even been owned by the same property owner.
Yes.
Was set up so that they could use parking in different areas. And one of those buildings,
It was a parking lot, now it's a house, right?
The one of them was off to the right rear, could use parking within 83. I mean, it was a mess. They had agreements going back and forth.
Well, I think somebody cheated somewhere. And I think it might have been the original surveyor who was somehow able to borrow land from this property and put it over here. I really don't see a solution that we could make.
No, we can't make one. The DPW tried to get them to increase the width of the entryway.
Can you say, well, we can only get 103 cars. You can only use so many square feet in the building. The rest of it, you have to wall off. That's not reasonable.
Right.
No.
So reluctantly, I feel that they're justified in asking for this.
Yeah, I do think
I agree.
that they are justified. I also think that we're justified in requiring that the easement be maintained.
Yes,
Flow.
I think it has to be.
Because you could sell that property and agree to drop the easement. And if they did that, you got a real mess.
I had a former client that did just that. And when he sold an adjoining office building, all of a sudden access to the parking garage was made a whole lot more difficult.
Well, just to be clear, what DPW wanted, because I dug into this pretty deeply, was to knock out a bunch of parking spaces.
Yeah.
Increase the width of the driveway coming in, widen the curb cut coming in and out, because they wanted two-way traffic. The way it's set up now, you have one way coming in, you go around in a circle, you go out the other way.
So, Andy, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah. I move that we grant the variance for 83 East Ave parking solution as presented. Given the apparent hardship that the original calculations were unattainable and mixed up in a variety of land ownership issues.
I'll second that.
You're adding the easement, correct?
Yeah, and then just add on to that, we require that the easement through the adjoining property for exit from the parking lot be maintained.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Before we go away, I want to talk about something real brief, because I don't want you guys falling asleep on me. And I'm about ready. I have a concept that I use called reliance. And what it is in Connecticut land use law, it is the city's obligation to support businesses and residents throughout the city as its city develops with sufficient transportation and other resources. And if you have something that exists for a long time, I don't know if this damn thing that we're talking about existed for 25 years, like the applicant claimed, because I have no idea. But if it did, then reliance kicks in because it's been around so damn long and it's been no big issue with anybody. Then I think at that point, we have an obligation to support whatever grew up out of that. What grew up out of that is those folks bought the home and then started childcare. They have a reliance that they can use the circular drive. Now, I grant all the rest of it, the way they pushed back and weren't wholly honest with us, in my opinion, creates a real problem. And I'm happy that we went the way we did. But that's how one of the big factors in my determination, particularly in an old city like Norwalk. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting maybe to sit with the city attorney and go through a couple of these things to know a little bit more about it. But, I think that's a good idea.
I think you're right, because I think it's an argument that a lot of people could make. And we should understand, and it's one that certainly has common sense to it, in my view.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they had presented
My
differently.
last thoughts are as follows. Somehow some of these people should be reminded that when you're in front of somebody asking for something, it's best not to argue with them.
The other piece as
and
well
rule
is,
number 2, when you're in a hole, stop digging.
Yeah, that's right.
yes, yeah, I like that when you're in a hole, stop digging. One of the things I noticed as well, and I don't know if this is super relevant, but they didn't put the house up for sale late summer. So are they trying to close permits so they can sell and move on? Who knows? I mean, it's not up for sale now, but it was up for a bit.
Who knows?
Yep.
One item on my mind is I would like to start the Zoom meeting at 7:15.
I would too, with the actual meeting starting at 7:30.
Yes.
Yes, because I think we got to work out who the hell's online and who's not.
I had an exceedingly difficult time getting on the meeting. And I don't know if it was the email I was sent or
Who knows?
what. Had to switch computers. And I apologize for,
Yeah. Well,
my-
I nominate Greg Bashir as our IT expert.
I am on Zoom 8 hours a day, so I know it quite well. One of the things that I did notice, Tammy and everyone else, is that the email that you send to us says, this is just for you, don't email it out. And what I noticed was Lee, and this could have been purely coincidental, when you were connecting based on the email that I sent you, I kept getting muted. So I kept dropping in, dropping out, dropping in, dropping out. So like that could have been purely coincidental, but like I couldn't.
That's
turn on
not.
my
He came in labeled as Greg Bashir.
Right. And that's what I mean is that like, I think we each have our own, the way it's set up, because we're speakers and everyone else is not, we have each our own code to get in.
Yep.
So like, number one, Tammy, I think it would be helpful if you sent out like a meeting invite with it in it, like per person.
Yes,
Or number
here's the
two,
thing. I don't
quick spreadsheet
I
that says.
don't think Tammy has an option.
I don't send the invites. I send a list of all of the addresses to, it's a portal. It's a Zoom meeting request portal. And someone in
Right.
another department sends it out. It looks like it originates from me, but it doesn't. I get the same email invite as well.
Well, what was interesting, I couldn't get in. I primarily was logging in on the email that I was sent by
Yeah.
you.
By
And
me, yeah.
Which isn't you. I
Yeah.
know that. And every time I kept trying to enter, I had to go back to my email list, and the email to Greg was the top of the list. So I would click on that.
Yeah,
And-
Tammy, for a solution for this, when the public comes, do you have to invite them one by one? Or do they
So-
get a mass invitation?
No, when the public dials in, then Michelle can promote them. So that's what we did with one of those in advance. They had told us they would need
Well,
that.
could we use that as a solution in the future? If we've got a key member that can't get logged in, could we bring them in as a member of the public and then promote them?
Sure, yeah, they could just go through the agenda link and.
Well, what was interesting when I was trying to call in, I would get connected. You would hear my voice for about a minute, and then the line went dead, and I got a dial tone. So I had to
think I know
start
why.
the process
I
over.
think I know why. You were coming in as Greg Bashir.
Yes.
Greg Bashir was already online.
Yep.
Somehow their computer figured out that they didn't need a phone and a guy who's
Yeah.
online with video.
Oh yeah, no, I understand it. I'm just.
Hey, it was fun though.
Oh, wow. That was real fun.
Maybe for you.
One of the questions maybe you can ask of your IT person is, does each of the presenters here, all of us being presenters, have our own passcode to get in? Or is there one passcode that we all use? Because that's going to answer a lot of questions. Because if this happens again and I forward mine, we're going to have these problems. So I think understanding of like, does every person here have because there's the member thing, then there's the passcode. Do we have our own unique, or are we one group? Because what we might want to do in the future is what Lee said a bit ago, is just have one number and one link for everybody, whether you're a participant or a speaker, and then it'll take you 2 seconds to promote us into the speaking capacity. And that way there's no confusion on the numbers we're using, that all 20 people on are using the same one. And you just promote people into the speaker box.
Yeah, I'll explore and see what else we could do.
Okay.
We still have to vote on the minutes.
Sure.
Did everybody read the minutes from November and
Quickly,
December?
yes, I did.
Did you have any issues?
I did not.
Okay.
Remember, I was only there for one of those 2 meetings.
Yes. Well, the big issue I had was my name was misspelled 27 times, and it got corrected. So
Would you just change your name?
I've thought about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, does anybody have any issues with November and December's meeting minutes?
Just
No,
December, I gotta
neither
abstain.
one of them, so. I'm okay.
Okay, hearing that nobody has any objections, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted from November and December for those that are applicable to each meeting.
I will second that.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And I'll make a
Just to
motion.
be clear, I'm sorry to be clear. I wasn't at the December meeting, so you said as applicable.
Yes,
For me, it's not applicable.
okay. I'll make a motion, we adjourn for the evening.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Night, night.
you.
Bye.
Happy New Year.